Hi, I'm Dan Naylor. I am the broker of Stone River Realty, and I am the president of the Institute of Real Estate Education. Um, I was browsing the Division of Real Estate new website. They just updated a couple months ago, and it is sharp. It is beautiful. But there was something on there. I was looking for, there were some new rule updates in June, and we released a newsletter from the Institute of Real Estate about all of those rule changes. But there was one line there on the Division of Real Estate website that was rather concerning to me. And that was, it said, a new rule was that a broker is required to transfer funds out of the trust account and into the operating account prior to further dispersing the funds. Now, anyone who's been a broker for a while knows that this sounds crazy. I mean, the idea of putting anybody's trust money into the operating account is insane. It's commingling, right? Put any kind of trust money into your operating account, and now you're putting the client's money into your broker money, and it is just it's illegal. It's against the rules. It's crazy. So when I saw this on their website, I'm like, what in the world? How could they created a new law that's in a direct contradiction to the existing laws we've had about trust money and safe handling of funds for years and years and years. And I'm like, whoa, what does this even mean? Does this mean that every time that I take a client's money and I have to take it to title, I have to transfer it to my brokerage account first, and then I get to write a check from my brokerage account or do a wire transfer from my brokerage operating account to the title company for those funds for my clients? Or does it mean that I have to get a separate brokerage operating account now that's separate from my regular brokerage operating account, so that my trust funds can go into a brokerage operating account without commingling that with my regular operating brokerage money, so that I'm not getting in trouble with this commingling rule? So, this just was bonkers to me. This was just crazy. And actually, the first time I heard about it, I was listening to a commission meeting where a broker had called in one of the commissioners to ask this very question. They were very concerned about this idea that you would have to transfer money from your trust account to the brokerage account, the operating account, before you disperse those funds. So I had that same concern. So I pulled up their website where they've got the rules are, and right there on their rules update page, it says all brokerage trust account funds must be put into the operating account further to dispersing the funds. And that just sent my mind for a loop. So, like I said, any brokers watching this video probably know exactly what I'm talking about. That's like the biggest no-no you can do, right? You can't, stealing the money outright would be a bigger no-no, but that rarely happens. So I had to get to the bottom of this. I mean, there's lots of times when where the money is, the deadlines aren't exactly clear. Like sometimes I'll have someone ask, like a real estate sales agent will ask me, well, how much time after the client gives me the money do I have to deliver that to the broker? And the answer is there is no deadline, but you want to do that as fast as humanly possible so that you get that liability out of your hands. You don't want to hold client money in your own hand for any longer than you absolutely have to, because anytime that money's in your hand, the liability's on you. And if you lose that money, if if anything happens to it, who's responsible? Well, it's the one who's holding it, right? So there's a lot of situations like that aren't clearly defined in law, but you just want to get it handled, get it taken care of as fast as you can. But this situation, this rule where it says to move the trust account money into the operating account, it makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm like, how? There's no way. These rules go through so many vetting processes. They come up with an idea for a new rule they want to make, and they kind of talk about it in the commission, or somebody comes and presents a problem and they write up a new idea, and then they get division staff like Justin Barney to kind of draft up a potential rule update based on what's been proposed. And then he brings that back to he sometimes goes through committees where they kind of talk it through and talk it over. And then he brings that back to the commission, and then the commission looks at it and decides, is this what we wanted to accomplish? Is this language going to accomplish what we think it will? And then if it passes that approval process, then they take the rule, and sometimes they'll even have to pass these through the Attorney General of the state to make sure that the rules that they're doing are appropriate, mostly when it has to do with contract language. They want to make sure that it's all legal and that everything's going to be chop with the Attorney General. And that's only with rules that the division can control, right? That the commission writes. That's the administrative rules. That's not even mentioning the legislation, the statutes that have to go through that whole other process of going through the legislature, where they'll debate the rules and do the rule rewrites and all of those things. So these rules go through a huge vetting process. And so that's not to say that occasionally mistakes don't slip through, because they do. But for something this big to slip through that process, that is absolutely insane. So I was like, there's no way that this could be in there like that says. And so you know what I do when I see something that doesn't make any sense? This language that I read, that was on the website. And what's text on a website? That's stuff that the marketing team usually does, right? That's just something that somebody publishes for consumption, which it needs to be sanitary. It needs to be vetted, but it's not the rule writers who write the website. And I realized that what I was looking at was a website summary of the actual law. So I followed the links to the actual law where they post what is the new rules, and they show, and I can look up what they changed, what they crossed out, what they added, and I looked up the actual rule. And here's what I found is that in section 15, it actually says a principal broker may not pay a commission from the real estate trust account without first A, B, C, D, E, and then F, depositing the funds into the principal broker's operating account prior to further dispersing the funds. Okay? So this whole mix-up about trust accounts now have to put their money into the operating account before they can disperse the funds, that only applies if you are dispersing the trust funds as real estate commissions. Okay? Way different than it sounded at first, right? That makes so much more sense. So you have a transaction, right? You have the trust funds come into the trust account, and then the transaction closes. If some of those trust funds need to be dispersed to the buyer or the seller, then they would have those wire transferred or a certified check sent over, or whatever funds the title requires. And from there, they would disperse them to the buyer or the seller. So that way, the buyer's money goes in the trust account, goes straight into the title's trust account, and then straight to the proper party. But sometimes that money, after the transaction's complete, they realize that the title company is going to be paying back to the broker the amount of the commissions. And if the amount of the commissions is in that trust account, then they usually, once closing has happened and recording is complete, then they give authorization that the money that you have in your trust account can then be converted into commissions for the brokerage. Okay, so now, after recording has happened, now that money that did belong to the client, that was trust funds for the client that you couldn't touch, now, because of the contracts that were signed, because of your agency agreement and your listing agreement and your representation agreement with the buyer or the seller, now that that's all executed, they've closed on their transaction, now that money is legally changed from their money to the brokerage money. And so now at this point, now the broker needs to take that money out of the trust account, and often they pay a commission to an agent, right? Or sometimes to the broker, or the split, whatever your brokerage agreement is. So now the money is the brokerage money, and they need to pay that agent. Well, I guess sometimes agents were getting paid directly out of that trust account. Like the broker would get a certified check straight from that account, or they would pull cash out and give it to the agent. And in the past, that was, I don't know how often that was done, but what the division found is that sometimes it was a little more difficult for them to track where those funds were going if those funds for commissions were sent directly out to a third party from the brokerage itself. And anyone who's an independent contractor, you could call that a third party. So the division wanted to be able to better track funds that were converted from client trust funds into brokerage commissions or brokerage operating funds, however you want to convert them that way. And so that's where this new rule came in, where it says a principal broker may not pay a commission from a real estate trust account without first depositing the funds into the principal broker's operating account prior to further dispersing the funds. So this rule is really just creating a paper trail from trust funds that were client money that we need to track religiously, that we need to make sure that all of that is shipshape. They even have to, by law, reconcile the trust account with the client records every 30 days now. But now they have a better paper trail when those funds, when the recording happens somewhere else, those trust funds are converted within the trust account to brokerage money. And now the law says that you have to, well, the rule, excuse me, not the law, says that you have to take those funds, put them into the brokerage operating account to show a nice paper trail that these funds were converted to brokerage funds, and then you can disperse those as commissions. So an interesting new rule, but a little bit of controversy about the way that was distributed based on the website and based on the some of the complaints I heard come into the commission meetings when I was listening in on those commission meetings. So always go to the source, right? Always track down what the money is. Always track down what the law actually says if there's a question. Because sometimes I've even seen people get fined for things that if they had read the rules more strictly, they could have argued that what they had done was not actually against the rules. Now, I definitely advocate following the rules and treating your clients the best way, but sometimes there's a little bit of room for interpretation, and so we need to understand what's the right thing to do, what the rule actually says, so that we can do the best things for our client, as well as being upright with the division and with the state of Utah. So, okay, thanks for joining me. I'll actually be at the UAR convention next week, and I'll probably report back a little bit of my learning from there. If you want to ask any questions about that, I'd be happy to hear them in the comments, or email me at dan@realestateonlinelearning.com, and I'd be happy to answer any of those questions for you. So thanks for joining me. I thought this was an interesting kind of controversial topic, which turned out to not be controversial so much as just kind of a miscommunication. But hey, thanks for having us, and hope you'll tune into the next videos. We'll see ya.